In 1911, the most powerful government on earth did something drastic. It looked at one man's company, a company so enormous it controlled 90% of all the oil in America, and it ripped that company into 34 pieces. The goal was simple: stop him, cut him down to size, end the monopoly. And it worked. The empire was shattered. There was just one problem. Breaking up his company didn't make John D. Rockefeller poorer. It made him the first billionaire in American history. This is the story of a bookkeeper who earned 50 cents a day, built the most feared business the world had ever seen, and got so rich that even destroying his empire only made the numbers bigger. And the strangest part? Depending on how you count, he may still be the richest human being who ever lived. Let's rewind to where it started, with a broke kid and a notebook. John Davison Rockefeller was born in 1839 into a family that was, to put it kindly, complicated. His father was a traveling con man who sold fake cures and vanished for months at a time. His mother, deeply religious, held the family together on almost nothing. So young John learned two things early and never let go of either: God and the dollar. At 16, he landed his first job as an assistant bookkeeper, earning about 50 cents a day. And here's the detail that explains the entire rest of his life. He loved it. Not the money, the ledger, the columns. The idea that every single cent could be tracked, controlled, and accounted for. Most kids that age want to escape the numbers. Rockefeller wanted to master them. So what's your dream, kid? To make $100,000 and to live to 100. That's oddly specific. I've done the math on both. He got the money. He missed the age. But that obsession with counting was about to build an empire. Here's the part that gets left out of the villain story, because it's inconvenient. Rockefeller wasn't just ruthless. He was, on pure business mechanics, one of the greatest operators who ever lived. And to understand how he got so rich, you have to understand what he actually did right. It's 1863. In a town in Pennsylvania, someone drills the first successful oil well, and the world goes insane. Oil is the new gold. Thousands of people rush in to drill it, and they all make the same bet. The money is in finding the oil. Rockefeller looked at that stampede and walked the other way. He didn't want to drill. Drilling was a gamble. You might hit a fortune or a dry hole. Rockefeller hated gambles. What he wanted was the boring part, the refining. Taking the raw crude and turning it into kerosene, the fuel that lit America's lamps every night. Everyone else chased the jackpot. Rockefeller took the steady toll booth that every drop of oil had to pass through. And then he did something almost nobody in that era did. He became obsessed, genuinely, relentlessly obsessed, with waste. Other refiners threw away everything but the kerosene. Rockefeller looked at the garbage and saw money. The leftover gunk? Turn it into lubricating oil, paraffin wax, petroleum jelly, the stuff we now call Vaseline, tar, paint, even an early kind of chewing gum. By the end, Standard Oil made over 300 products from a barrel that competitors mostly dumped in the river. He counted the drops of solder used to seal his oil cans, literally counted them, and found he could use one drop fewer and save a fortune at scale. You're really counting drops of solder? 40 drops seals it. 39 also seals it. Multiply that by 10 million cans. He was that guy. And because he squeezed every cent out of the process, he could sell kerosene cheaper than anyone alive and still make a profit while his competitors bled. For the average American family, this was a gift. Light got cheaper. Life got better. Rockefeller genuinely lowered the cost of illuminating the country. That's the half of the story his admirers tell. Now here's the other half. Because being efficient wasn't enough for Rockefeller. He didn't want to beat his competitors. He wanted to erase them. And to do it, he built a machine of pressure so effective it changed American law forever. The weapon was the railroads. Back then, every refiner had to ship their oil by train. The railroads set the price. But Rockefeller's Standard Oil was shipping such enormous volumes that he could march into the railroad offices and demand a secret discount, a rebate. "Ship with me," he'd say, "and you'll charge me less than everyone else." The railroads, desperate for his massive, reliable business, said yes. Now sit with what that means. Rockefeller was already the most efficient refiner. Now, he was also paying less to ship than his rivals. His competitors couldn't win on cost because the game was rigged before they even loaded the train. And then he made it worse. In one scheme, Standard Oil arranged not just to get its own discount, but to get paid a cut of the shipping fees its competitors paid. Read that again. Every time a rival shipped a barrel of oil, a slice of that payment went into Rockefeller's pocket. His enemies were literally funding him just by trying to compete. When word of this leaked, the public erupted. Oil drillers rioted. Barrels were smashed. It became known as the Cleveland Massacre, because in a matter of weeks, Rockefeller used the pressure to swallow 22 of his 26 Cleveland competitors. He'd walk into a rival's office with an offer. Sell to me now, take my stock, and you'll be fine. Refuse, and I'll sell oil below cost in your town until you're bankrupt, then buy your company for pennies. It wasn't really a choice. It was a polite threat in a nice suit. He didn't even see himself as the villain. Rockefeller genuinely believed he was, in his words, an angel of mercy, rescuing chaotic little companies from a brutal industry and folding them into something orderly and strong. A remark long attributed to him captures the mindset perfectly. Competition is a sin. To Rockefeller, crushing his rivals wasn't cruelty. It was cleaning up a mess. By the 1880s, the machine was almost complete. Standard Oil refined around 90% of America's oil. But Rockefeller had a legal problem. Back then, it was hard for one company to operate across many states. So his lawyers invented something new, and it would echo through history. They called it the trust. A single board of trustees quietly controlling dozens of supposedly separate companies. On paper, competition. In reality, one hand pulling every string. The Standard Oil Trust bundled around 40 companies under 9 trustees, with Rockefeller at the center. It was a brilliant piece of financial engineering. It was also the reason America eventually had to invent the word antitrust. Because the bigger Standard Oil got, the more people started asking a dangerous question. How did this happen? And one person went looking for the answer with a vengeance. Her name was Ida Tarbell, and her father had been one of the small oil men Rockefeller's machine had crushed. As a journalist, she spent years digging into Standard Oil's secret deals, the rebates, the threats, the buyouts. She published it all in a magazine series that gripped the nation. She didn't scream. She documented. Page after page of cold, precise evidence. And she did what riots and lawsuits hadn't managed to do. She turned public opinion decisively against the most powerful businessman on earth. The government could no longer look away. Armed with a new law, the Sherman Antitrust Act, it went to war with Standard Oil. And in 1911, after years of legal battle, the Supreme Court delivered the verdict Rockefeller's enemies had dreamed of. Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. It had to be destroyed, broken into 34 separate companies. The empire was over. The monopoly was dead. And it was the best financial thing that ever happened to him. Here's the twist nobody saw coming. The one that turns this whole story into something almost absurd. When Standard Oil was split into 34 pieces, Rockefeller didn't lose his ownership. He owned about a quarter of the whole trust. So when it shattered, he simply received about a quarter of every single one of the 34 new companies. He now held a slice of all of them. And those 34 companies? Freed from the giant bureaucracy, forced to actually compete and grow, each one took off. Their stock prices climbed and climbed. Within about a decade, the combined value of the broken pieces was worth far more than the whole had ever been. Some of those pieces, by their modern names: Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, Amoco, Conoco. The giants of big oil today are the scattered shards of Rockefeller's empire. So the government's plan to cut him down to size did the exact opposite. It multiplied him. Sir, they broke up your company. Yes. Into 34 pieces. Yes. And you own a piece of all 34. Yes. So you're now richer. Considerably. On September 29th, 1916, newspapers across America announced it. John D. Rockefeller had become the country's first billionaire. He was in his 70s, mostly retired, and the very act meant to end his reign had crowned him. In 1913, his fortune was estimated at around $900 million, which, and this is the number that really lands, was roughly 2% of the entire United States economy. One man. 2% of everything the nation produced. So how rich was he, really? This is where it gets genuinely hard to measure, and genuinely wild. If you just adjust his fortune for inflation, he was worth somewhere around $30 billion in today's money. Impressive, but plenty of living billionaires beat that. But money isn't just about prices. It's about how big you are relative to everyone else. And measured as a share of the economy he lived in, Rockefeller's fortune would be worth somewhere in the range of $400 billion today. By that measure, he wasn't just rich. He was, for about 80 years, the richest American who ever lived, only recently overtaken, and even then, only by one measure. No modern fortune has ever commanded such a large slice of its own nation's wealth. And then Rockefeller did the thing that complicates the villain story all over again. He gave most of it away. Hundreds of millions of dollars poured into universities, medical research, public health. Foundations that helped wipe out diseases and built institutions still standing today. The same man who crushed competitors with secret rebates also funded the science that saved millions of lives. Both are true. Neither cancels the other. And that's the knot at the center of John D. Rockefeller. Was he a genius or a villain? A builder or a bully? The honest answer is that he was, somehow, all of it at once. He lowered the price of light for millions of families and rigged the game so no one could compete with him. He founded institutions that healed the world and built his fortune with tactics that forced a nation to write brand new laws just to contain him. You can't neatly separate the man who saved you money on your lamp oil from the man who bankrupted the rivals who might have saved you more. He wanted $100,000. He ended up with a slice of an entire nation. And when the most powerful government on earth tried to tear it all down, it only proved the thing Rockefeller had believed since he was a boy counting drops of solder, that in the end, the numbers always win. He just made sure they were always counting in his favor.